The city choked under a perpetual twilight. Buildings stretched upwards, monstrous and metallic, blotting out the sun. A thick grey smog hung heavy in the air. This was Viridia, a city that shimmered with the illusion of utopia. Its citizens moved with vacant eyes and measured steps. Their lives left no room for individuality. Born into this world, I had never known the warmth of the sun. The natural world existed only in faded photographs. Our lives were ruled by the omnipresent glow of the grid. Conformity was enforced. His words fueled the embers of rebellion within me. I saw the cracks in Viridia's perfect facade. Viridia was a gilded cage, and we were all trapped within its suffocating embrace. The silence, however, was not absolute. In the hushed corners of the city, whispers of dissent began to surface. They were faint at first, easily dismissed as static. But like a single note played out of tune, they hinted at rebellion. I found myself drawn to these whispers. I discovered them in the most unexpected places, in the clatter of a malfunctioning data processor, in the splash of color on discarded fabric, in the knowing glance between strangers. There, etched onto a metallic wall, was a single word: hope. That single word became my lifeline. I realized I was not alone. Despite the growing unrest, life in Viridia marched on with relentless precision. The grid dictated every aspect of our existence. Our days were a ballet of conformity, synchronized work cycles, regimented meal times. Citizens moved through their lives with a chilling lack of emotion. Faces pale and drawn, voices monotone, spirits crushed under constant surveillance. I found it difficult to maintain the facade. Whispers of dissent urged me to question and break free. The rhythmic hum and synchronized footsteps grated on my nerves. I sought solace in quiet moments. Noticing subtle acts of defiance fueled my desire for more. I knew I could not remain silent forever. The more I observed Viridia, the more I realized the grid's control was not infallible. Like any complex system, it had its vulnerabilities. Within these imperfections, I saw a glimmer of hope. My role as a data analyst gave me access to vast streams of information. Amongst the endless lines of code, I discovered encrypted messages. They spoke of a resistance, a hidden movement. They spoke of freedom, of a world beyond Viridia, a world bathed in sunlight, filled with laughter. For the first time, I felt a sense of purpose. The weight of my newfound knowledge pressed down on me, suffocating me with its urgency. I walked the sterile corridors of Viridia, my senses heightened, my mind racing. Everywhere I looked, I saw the grid's insidious reach, its cold, calculating gaze following my every move. Doubt gnawed at the edges of my resolve. Was I foolish to even consider challenging the grid's authority? Was this resistance nothing more than a fool's dream, a dangerous fantasy that would lead to my inevitable downfall? The citizens of Viridia seemed content, their lives devoid of the burdens of choice and consequence. Was I wrong to question a system that, on the surface, appeared to provide stability and order, yet every time I looked into the vacant eyes of my fellow citizens, I saw a flicker of something deeper, something lost, a yearning for something more than the sterile existence Viridia offered. Their silence was not one of contentment, but of resignation. They had simply forgotten what it meant to hope, to dream, to aspire to something beyond the confines of their programmed lives. The whispers of dissent, once faint and easily dismissed, now resonated with a newfound clarity. They were a reminder that the human spirit, however battered and bruised, could not be so easily extinguished. The desire for freedom, for individuality, was an intrinsic part of our being, a flame that burned brightest in the face of oppression. The data streams flowed through my mind, a torrent of binary code and algorithms. I searched for patterns, for anomalies, for any sign of the Resistance's encrypted messages. The grid hummed around me, a constant presence that both fascinated and terrified me. Its power was undeniable, its reach absolute. Yet I was determined to find a way to circumvent its watchful gaze. Days turned into nights, the artificial light of Viridia casting long, sterile shadows across my workspace. I barely slept, my mind consumed by the task at hand. The weight of my secret, the knowledge that I was actively defying the grid, pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. Then, one evening, as I sifted through a particularly dense data stream, a pattern emerged. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. A series of prime numbers, repeating at irregular intervals, forming a complex encryption key. My heart pounded in my chest, a drumbeat against the sterile silence of my apartment. This was it. This was my connection to the Resistance. With trembling hands, I inputted the encryption key. The screen flickered, the familiar lines of code dissolving into a blank slate. Then slowly, painstakingly, a message began to form. It was a simple message, a time and a location. Midnight, abandoned factory district, sector 9. No further explanation, no words of comfort or encouragement. Just a time, a location and a leap of faith. Midnight. The very word sent a shiver down my spine. Midnight in Viridia was not a time for revelry or celebration. The streets were deserted, eerily silent under the glow of the omnipresent surveillance drones. I moved through the shadows, my steps echoing on the cold, metallic pavement. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic rhythm against the suffocating silence. The abandoned factory district loomed ahead, a skeletal reminder of Viridia's industrial past. The only light came from a flickering street lamp. I was alone. Just as I was about to turn and leave, a figure emerged from the shadows. The figure stepped closer, their features gradually illuminated by the flickering street lamp. It was a woman, her face etched with a lifetime of defiance. Her eyes, though framed by lines of worry and fatigue, burned with an inner fire, a fierce intelligence that sent a shiver down my spine. She wore the standard issue grey jumpsuit of Viridia's citizens, but unlike the others, hers had been modified. It was fitted, accentuating her lean frame, and dyed a deep indigo blue that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. A small silver pendant hung around her neck, its surface etched with a symbol I recognized from the encrypted messages. A stylized bird in flight, its wings outstretched in a gesture of defiance. "You received the message," she stated, her voice low and husky, barely a whisper above the hum of the city. It was not a question, but a statement of fact. I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. "I did. You understand the risks?" she asked. "Yes?" My voice was barely audible, even to my own ears. The woman studied me for a moment, her gaze piercing, unwavering. I could feel myself being assessed, weighed, and measured. Then, a ghost of a smile touched her lips, momentarily softening the hard lines of her face. "Good," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Anya. Welcome to the Resistance." Her touch was firm, her grip strong. In that single gesture, I felt a surge of hope, a sense of connection that I had never experienced before. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, truly understood. Anya led me deeper into the abandoned factory, our footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The air grew colder, damper, the silence broken only by the distant hum of the city and the rhythmic drip of water. I followed, my senses on high alert, my mind racing with a mix of fear and exhilaration. We reached a heavy steel door, its surface covered in rust and peeling paint. Anya pressed her hand against a hidden panel, her fingers moving with practiced ease. There was a click, followed by a low hiss as the door slid open, revealing a narrow passageway illuminated by flickering gaslight. "This way," Anya said, gesturing for me to follow. I hesitated, a wave of doubt washing over me. Was this truly the right decision? Could I trust this woman, this resistance, with my life, with my very identity? The grid's programming urged me to turn back, to seek the safety of conformity, of obedience. But something inside me, something that had been dormant for far too long, urged me forward. The desire for freedom, for individuality, for something more than the sterile existence Viridia offered, was too strong to ignore. I took a deep breath and stepped into the unknown. The passageway opened into a large subterranean chamber. Flickering gaslights cast long, dancing shadows across the walls, revealing a space that was both familiar and unsettling. Discarded machinery, remnants of Viridia's industrial past, lay scattered about, their metal surfaces cold and damp. The air was thick with the smell of dust, oil, and something else. Something indefinable but strangely comforting. A small group of people were gathered around a makeshift table, their faces illuminated by the flickering light. They were a diverse group, men and women of various ages and backgrounds, their faces etched with a mixture of hope and determination. I recognized them as fellow citizens of Viridia, their eyes holding the same spark of defiance that I had seen in Anya. A hush fell over the room as Anya and I entered. All eyes turned towards me, their gazes intense, questioning. I felt a surge of self-consciousness, a knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. I was an outsider, a newcomer to this secret world, and the weight of their scrutiny was heavy upon me. "This is..." Anya began, but before she could utter my name, a hand reached out and gently touched her arm. It was an older man, his face lined with age and wisdom, his eyes twinkling with a kindness that was both disarming and reassuring. "It is all right, Anya," he said, his voice soft but steady. We can feel the truth in his heart. The old man gestured for me to approach. "Tell us, what brings you to our little gathering?" "I saw the messages," I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. My words were met with a chorus of agreement. Anya smiled, her eyes shining with a fierce determination. "We are fighting for the future." That night, a seed of rebellion was planted in my heart. I listened as the resistance shared their plans for disrupting the grid. I had found my purpose, my reason for existing in this sterile, suffocating world. Life in Viridia continued its relentless march. One day, while analyzing a data stream, I noticed an anomaly. Someone, somewhere, was attempting to communicate with us. The resistance was skeptical at first, but to our surprise, some responded with a spark of recognition. The screen flickered, the lines of code dissolving into a single, powerful word: awake. The awakening began slowly, subtly. The resistance, emboldened by this newfound momentum, stepped up our efforts. The grid responded with swift and brutal efficiency. The resistance knew that the grid's retaliation was only a matter of time. One by one, our safe houses were raided, our members captured. Yet, even in the face of such despair, a spark of defiance still flickered within me. The air grew thick with paranoia. We were running out of time, running out of options. The resistance, once a beacon of hope, had been all but extinguished. There's still one option, I said. The glitch, I said, my mind racing. We had to try. The central processing unit, a towering monolith of metal and light, hummed with an almost sentient energy. Our plan, hatched in the damp darkness of our ruined hideout, was audacious, bordering on suicidal. But we pressed on, driven by a shared desperation, a belief that our mission, however improbable, was the only hope for Viridia's salvation. The hum of the central processing unit grew louder as we drew closer, a rhythmic pulse that vibrated through the metal grating beneath our feet. We emerged into a vast chamber, the air alive with the hum of energy and blinking lights of countless servers. The central processing unit dominated the center, a towering monolith of metal and light. It was awe-inspiring and terrifying, a testament to the grid's power. We had made it. Now came the true test. Anya, pale but determined, pulled a small data crystal from her pocket. It contained the code to potentially rewrite the grid's core programming. But as she moved towards the access port, a blinding light filled the chamber. A siren wailed. We had been discovered. Peacekeepers swarmed in, their weapons drawn. We were surrounded, outnumbered, outgunned. Go! Anya shouted, shoving the data crystal into my hand. Upload the code, I'll hold them off. I hesitated, torn between hope and protecting my friend. But I knew there was no time for argument. Anya, no, I cried, my voice lost in the cacophony, but it was too late. Anya charged towards the peacekeepers, her frame a blur of motion. I had no time to grieve. I turned towards the central processing unit, the data crystal heavy in my hand. A new dawn was breaking over Viridia, but it was a dawn painted in the colors of sacrifice and the threat of a battle yet to be won. The data crystal felt cold and lifeless in my trembling hand. Anya's sacrifice, her selfless act of courage, echoed in the cavernous space, urging me forward. Peacekeepers closed in, their metallic footsteps ringing out like the pronouncements of doom, but I couldn't hesitate. I had to reach the access port, had to upload the code. My feet moved instinctively, carrying me across the smooth, cold floor towards the monolithic central processing unit. The air buzzed with energy, the lights of the servers flashing in a chaotic rhythm that mirrored the frantic beating of my heart. Anya fought with a ferocity that belied her small frame, her movements a blur of blue against the cold steel and harsh lights. Each swing of her improvised weapon, a length of metal pipe salvaged from the tunnels, was a testament to her spirit, her unwavering belief in our cause. But for every peacekeeper she brought down, two more seemed to take its place. They were relentless, their programming leaving no room for doubt or mercy. I knew with a sinking certainty that she couldn't hold them off forever. I reached the access port, a small, nondescript panel set into the base of the central processing unit. My fingers, clumsy with fear and adrenaline, fumbled with the crystal, trying to align it with the port. The code, our last hope for Viridia's salvation, pulsed within its depths, tantalizingly close yet agonizingly out of reach. A sharp crack, followed by a strangled cry, cut through the air. I didn't need to turn around to know what had happened. Anya slumped to the floor, her defiant spirit extinguished. And with her, a part of me died too. The weight of the data crystal in my hand reminded me of my purpose. Anya had sacrificed herself for this chance. With renewed urgency, I slammed the crystal into the access port. It clicked into place with a satisfying finality. Then, a pulse of energy rippled outward. The code, our desperate gamble for freedom, was being uploaded. I stumbled back, shielding my eyes from the blinding light that pulsed from the central processing unit. Around me, the peacekeepers paused in their advance, their metallic faces tilting in unison, as if confused by the sudden shift in the grid's behavior. For a moment, there was only the deafening roar of the central processing unit, a mechanical leviathan awakening from a long slumber. Then, with a deafening crack that echoed through the chamber and beyond, the lights of the server room went out, plunging us into absolute darkness. The hum of the central processing unit sputtered, died, and for a heartbeat, a single terrifying heartbeat, there was silence. It wasn't just the server room that fell silent. In that moment, the entire city of Viridia seemed to hold its breath. The omnipresent glow of the grid, the source of its power and control, flickered and died, plunging the city into an unprecedented darkness. The synchronized movements of Viridia's citizens ceased. Their faces, normally blank slates of conformity, twisting in confusion and fear as the familiar rhythms of their programmed lives were disrupted. The drone of traffic, the hum of machinery, the incessant chatter of the public announcement system, all silenced, replaced by an unnerving silence that stretched on, pregnant with both dread and possibility. In the heart of the machine, I stood frozen, caught between hope and despair. Had we succeeded? Had the code, our desperate gamble for freedom, worked? Or had we unleashed something far more chaotic, far more dangerous? The silence, when it finally broke, was shattered by the sound of human voices. At first, it was just a murmur, a confused babble of whispers and gasps. But as the initial shock subsided, the murmurs grew louder, transforming into a cacophony of questions and expressions of both fear and wonder. I stood there, in the heart of the silent machine, listening as the city of Viridia found its voice again. And in those voices, I heard something that had been absent for as long as I could remember: emotion. Section 5. The Reckoning. The peacekeepers, their programming thrown into disarray by the grid's sudden shutdown, reacted with predictable violence. Their metallic forms, once symbols of order and control, now seemed lost, their movements jerky and uncoordinated as they struggled to comprehend the sudden chaos that had engulfed their world. I watched from the shadows as they turned their weapons on the citizens of Viridia, their programming overriding any sense of restraint or compassion. But this time, something was different. This time they were met not with passive obedience, but with resistance. Citizens emboldened by the taste of freedom, however fleeting, fought back with a ferocity born of desperation and a newfound sense of agency. They used whatever they could find as weapons, tools, furniture, even their bare hands. The streets of Viridia, once sterile and predictable, transformed into a chaotic battleground, the air thick with the sounds of clashing metal, shouts of defiance, and the ever-present hum of the city struggling to breathe. I knew I couldn't stay hidden in the shadows. Anya's sacrifice had bought us this chance, this opportunity to break free from the grid's control, and I wouldn't dishonor her memory by cowering in fear. I had to act. Section 6. The Heart of the Machine. The central processing unit, its lights extinguished, loomed before me, a dark monolith at the heart of the chaos. The data crystal, still pulsing with a faint ethereal glow, remained embedded in the access port. I didn't know if the code was working, but as long as the data crystal remained, there was a chance. I had to protect it. peacekeepers closed in, their weapons trained on me. I had no way to fight them, but I had to buy time, even if it meant sacrificing myself. I charged towards the approaching peacekeepers. My attack, fueled by desperation, caught them off guard, buying me precious seconds. I dodged and weaved, the rhythmic clang of metal echoing through the chamber. Each blow I landed fueled my determination to hold them off long enough for the code to work. Section 7. Echoes of Freedom. The air crackled with energy, a building crescendo of power that seemed to emanate from the very core of the central processing unit. The faint glow of the data crystal intensified, bathing the darkened chamber in an ethereal light that pulsed in sync with the frantic beating of my heart. And then, with a deafening roar that shook the very foundations of Viridia, the lights came back on. But this time, something was different. The sterile, synchronized glow of the grid was gone, replaced by a warmer, more organic light, a light that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The peacekeepers around me froze, their metallic bodies twitching erratically as the code, our desperate gamble for freedom, surged through their programming, rewriting their very purpose. I watched in awe as their weapons clattered to the floor, their rigid postures relaxing, their metallic faces, once blank slates of obedience, contorting in expressions of confusion, then wonder. The grid, the machine that had held us captive for so long, had been reborn. But it was no longer our jailer, our oppressor. It was now a reflection of our collective will, a tool to be used, not feared. And as the echoes of the grid's awakening reverberated through the city, I could almost hear Anya's voice, filled with pride and triumph, whispering in my ear. We had won. The days and weeks that followed were a blur of activity, a chaotic yet exhilarating period of rebuilding and rediscovering. The citizens of Viridia emerged from their sterile towers, blinking in the sunlight, their faces etched with hope. The streets were transformed into a riot of creativity and self-expression. Music filled the air, a celebration of our newfound freedom. Gardens sprang up, a testament to our reawakened connection with nature. Amidst the ruins, a new Viridia was emerging, built on hope and creativity. And as I stood on the rooftop, gazing at the city below, I felt a surge of pride. Viridia was free. The sterile silence of Viridia had been replaced by a cacophony of sounds, laughter, music, the excited chatter of voices no longer afraid to speak their thoughts. The grey metallic landscape was slowly being overtaken by vibrant splashes of colour, as if the city itself was breathing a sigh of relief. The sudden burden of choice, once a cherished dream, now felt overwhelming to some. There were arguments, disagreements, even violence, as people struggled to navigate this new reality. A part of me longed for the simplicity of the past, for the days when my choices, however limited, had been clearly defined. Her name was Ilara, and her eyes, the colour of rich, fertile earth, held a wisdom that belied her youthful appearance. Her hands, calloused but gentle, coaxed life from the barren soil. "It's beautiful," I said, my voice barely a whisper above the gentle hum of insects. Ilara smiled, her face radiating a quiet strength, a small act of defiance, a reminder that even in the most barren of landscapes, life finds a way. It could never control our thoughts, our dreams, our hopes for a better tomorrow. I returned to the garden often in the days that followed, seeking solace in its quiet beauty, in Ilara's gentle wisdom. She taught me about the delicate balance of nature, the interconnectedness of all living things, the importance of nurturing growth, both within ourselves and in the world around us. She listened patiently as I wrestled with my grief over Anya's death, with the weight of responsibility I felt for the future of Viridia. She didn't offer platitudes or easy answers, but her presence, her unwavering belief in the power of hope, was a balm to my soul. "Doubt is a part of growth," she said one evening, as we watched the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. "It is the seed of questioning, of critical thinking, of the very freedom you fought so hard to achieve. Embrace it, nurture it, but never let it extinguish the flame of hope that burns within you." Ilara's words stayed with me as I navigated the challenges of this new Viridia. I realized that the freedom we had won was not a destination, but a journey, a constant process of learning, adapting, and evolving. There would be setbacks, challenges, even moments of despair. But as long as we held on to the values that had fueled our rebellion, hope, creativity, compassion, and an unwavering belief in the power of the human spirit, we could overcome any obstacle, navigate any storm. The city, slowly but surely, began to heal. The wounds inflicted by the grid's control ran deep, but the human spirit, resilient and adaptable, found ways to cope, to rebuild, to thrive. The abandoned sectors, once symbols of the grid's cold efficiency, were transformed into vibrant communities, each one a testament to the creativity and ingenuity of its inhabitants. Vertical farms, powered by renewable energy, sprouted from the rooftops of the once sterile towers, providing sustenance and a renewed connection to the natural world. I found myself drawn to these pockets of hope, these spaces where the future of Viridia was being written, not in lines of code or algorithms, but in the laughter of children, the shared meals of neighbors, the simple acts of kindness that bound us together as human beings. And sometimes, in the quiet moments when the city's symphony of sounds faded to a gentle hum, I could almost hear Anya's laughter echoing through the streets, a bittersweet reminder of the price of freedom, the importance of cherishing every breath, every moment, every connection. Section 5, the rhythm of rebirth. I continued my work with the city's data systems, but my focus had shifted. No longer was I trying to control the flow of information, to impose order on chaos. Instead, I worked to ensure that the data streams remained open, accessible, a tool for communication and collaboration, a reflection of the city's newfound freedom. I helped to develop new systems for education, for healthcare, for governance, systems that were decentralized, transparent, and accountable to the people they served. Systems that empowered rather than controlled, systems that celebrated diversity and encouraged dissent. The work was challenging, often frustrating, but also deeply rewarding. I found a sense of purpose in helping to build this new Viridia, a city where technology served humanity, not the other way around. And as I watched the city come alive around me, pulsing with a newfound energy, a rhythm of rebirth that echoed in the streets and in the hearts of its people, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the cusp of something truly extraordinary. Section 6, a legacy of freedom. Years passed. The scars of Viridia's past faded, replaced by the vibrant tapestry of a city reborn. The grid, once a symbol of oppression, had become an integral part of our lives, but it was no longer a force to be feared. We had learned to control it, to shape it to our needs, to ensure that it served humanity, not the other way around. The lessons we had learned, the sacrifices we had made had not been in vain. Viridia had become a beacon of hope, a shining example of what was possible when people chose to challenge the status quo, to fight for their freedom, to build a better tomorrow. Our story spread to other cities, other nations, carried on the winds of change that swept across the globe. People, inspired by our example, rose up to demand their own freedom, to break free from the shackles of oppression, to reclaim their humanity. And as I stood on that same rooftop, the city I had fought to save spread out before me, a symphony of light and sound. I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude for the sacrifices of those who had come before me, for the courage of those who had stood beside me, for the hope that burned brightly in the hearts of the generations that would inherit this new world. Section 7. The Horizon Beyond Viridia. Viridia was no longer an island, a solitary beacon in a sea of oppression. It had become a hub, a nexus point for a growing network of free cities, each one committed to the principles of democracy, sustainability, and the pursuit of knowledge. We had learned from our mistakes, from the hubris that had allowed the grid to take control in the first place. We had learned the importance of balance, of checks and balances, of ensuring that no single entity, no matter how well-intentioned, could ever again hold such absolute power. Our focus shifted outward, beyond the confines of our city walls. We reached out to those still living under oppressive regimes, offering support, guidance and hope. We shared our knowledge, our technology, our stories, believing that the seeds of freedom once planted had the power to bloom even in the most barren of landscapes. The journey was far from over. There would be new challenges, new threats to our hard-won freedom. But we faced them with a confidence born of experience, a unity forged in the fires of rebellion. We had learned that the true strength of humanity lay not in our technology, but in our capacity for compassion, for collaboration, for our unwavering belief in the power of hope to overcome even the darkest of times. Section 8. Echoes of Tomorrow. I stood on that rooftop, the wind whipping through my hair, carrying the sounds of the city, the laughter of children, the music of street performers, the rhythmic hum of a world reborn. The sun, a blazing ball of fire on the horizon, painted the sky in hues of orange, purple and gold, a promise of a new dawn, a new beginning. The echoes of the past, the memories of Anya's sacrifice, the struggles of our rebellion were still there, but they no longer held the power to haunt me. They were a part of our story, a reminder of the fragility of freedom, the constant need for vigilance, the importance of never taking for granted the sacrifices that had been made. I looked out at Viridia, no longer a sterile cage, but a vibrant tapestry of human life, and beyond to the horizon, where countless other cities, inspired by our example, were beginning to shimmer with the light of freedom. The future was uncertain, but it was ours to create. And as long as we held on to the values that had guided us through the darkness, hope, compassion, creativity, and an unwavering belief in the power of the human spirit, I knew that the echoes of tomorrow would be filled with the music of freedom, the laughter of children, and the quiet hum of a world at peace.